Imagine being a struggling single mom slapped with a whopping $3,500 HOA fine all because your grass grew too tall. Now picture a nosy HOA president determined to evict you no matter what you do. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that is exactly what happened, and what I did next might just shock you. And the title story starts like this. Let me give you a little background on myself and what I do. I run a social media channel that includes me taking videos of myself mowing other people's lawns for free. It gets me views and helps highlight my lawn care company that I'm advertising for. I don't have the resources to travel too far out of where my company operates, so I try to find the yards that I want to do for free when I'm out and about running errands. If the yard is very bad, I usually try to connect with the homeowner that day to ask if they want to have their grass mowed for free and if I can make a video about it. Some people agree to the terms and we schedule a date and time for me to come out and do my thing. Sometimes a person is fine with the mow, but they don't want to have a video taken. I know there's people that will rescind the offer for a mow if they cannot get content, but I'm not one of those people. I understand that a person would feel embarrassed if their story is told on the internet, and especially for some of the older people that agree to a video, I make sure that I explain exactly what I'm gonna do and how my content is presented. That is why you will see a bunch of different videos on my social media and not have it focus mainly on these free mow videos. Anyway, it is free advertising for me either way. My truck will be in a person's driveway for a few hours, so anyone who walks or drives by can see my company's name and the kind of work I'm doing without anyone knowing that I'm doing it free of charge. I've gotten referrals from free mows, and I've gotten return customers who have hired me to help with landscaping after seeing what their yard looks like after the initial mow. And there are people that refuse because they believe there's a catch no matter how long I try to convince them that there isn't. Alright, now that you know about me, let me tell you about a mow I did about 2 years ago. I have received permission from the homeowner to write about this. All names have been changed, along with a few other details that could identify this person or their neighborhood, so if something sounds vague, that is by design. Well, the homeowner, we will call her Sarah, did want to make sure that this story was shared because of just what occurred within the HOA she was a part of, and to raise awareness that the things she went through are not normal and shouldn't be the status quo when it comes to HOAs and other housing communities out there. So I met Sarah when I was coming back from a dentist appointment. There was an accident on the road that I usually take to get to and from my house to the office, so the officers on the scene were directing traffic through a neighborhood that had an exit a mile down the road. I decided to take a little bit of time to go through the neighborhood and see if there were any places that needed a free mow. I remember turning a corner towards a no outlet sign and seeing a group of 3 houses at the end of the road. The one in the middle looked like there was weed growing in the front lawn. That is how high the grass was. I couldn't even find the driveway, so I parked by the sidewalk and waited up to try to get to the front door. There was a makeshift path of trampled down grass that led from the front door to the sidewalk, so I knew someone was at least visiting the house enough that they might be inside. I rang the doorbell and heard a muffled shout from behind the door. I did not want to try and check out the rest of the yard without the homeowner's permission, but just looking from my spot at the front door, it was bad. There were places I could tell where someone did try to cut down or just push down the grass so it didn't completely tower over the area. If the front of the house looked like it did, I was afraid of what the backyard looked like. The height of the grass told me this was months if not a full year without a proper mow. The door opened a good 2 minutes later to Sarah. She looked utterly exhausted and she looked very confused to see me outside her door. I didn't know who she had been expecting, but once the confusion faded, she looked resigned. Sarah, are you from the HOA? Me, no, I'm actually from insert business name here. And I wanted to ask if you would want me to mow your lawn for free. Sarah, what? Me, so I own a lawn and landscaping business, and one of the things I do is mow lawns for free if your lawn is a bit out of control. I was redirected here from the main road because of an accident, and I couldn't help but notice your front lawn. Sarah looking at me like I'm crazy. So wait, hold on. Before Sarah could ask anything, 2 little kids emerged from the house clinging to her legs. They started asking all sorts of questions, as little kids tend to do when there's someone new around, and I watched as Sarah's expression turned from tired to looking like she was about to cry. I was flustered and didn't really know what to do, so I apologized for taking up her time and headed back to where my car was parked. When I drove off, I could see that she had already shut the door. I couldn't keep Sarah and her lawn out of my head for the rest of the day, and I knew I needed to go back to explain explain myself. Just from what I could gather, I knew she was probably exhausted and had more important things to think about than her lawn, especially if the 2 kids were hers. So the next day, I went back to the neighborhood and found her house again. I was surprised to see another car parked in front of her house and an older woman making a big show of trying to push away the grass that she had to wade through to get back to her car. We are gonna call the woman Karen, well, because of reasons. When I pulled up, I was in the pickup truck that I use for my business, so I have my company's logo on the sides of the truck. Karen saw my logo as I got out of the truck and approached me. Karen: "So she's finally doing something about the mess of a yard." Me: "I hope that's something we can discuss. I'm sorry, and you are?" Karen: "Karen, president of the HOA board. Just so you know, I doubt she's going to be able to pay you for anything you two discuss. She's been delinquent with her fines." Me just nods, not really liking how this woman is talking about someone who lives in her community. Karen: "Maybe you can get through to her or have her pay up. Oh, and if you're gonna talk to her, tell her that the HOA is gonna continue to send her notices until she is done." Me: "I'm literally just here to talk, nothing else. And I don't work for you, so anything you need to do or say should come from you." Karen: "Well, you don't have to be so rude about it." She looks at my truck and takes a picture of the logo with her phone. "I'll be sure to let your boss know that you've been rude to a potential customer." I walked away at that point. To this day, Karen's audacity still makes my hair stand on end. Who talks to a random person like that? Anyway, I headed up to Sarah's door and rang the bell. She answered quickly, and this time I could tell she had been crying from how red her eyes were. Sarah looked behind me to see Karen's car drive off, and she invited me inside for a few minutes. The kids were hot on her heels, but when I sat down at the kitchen table, they were at my chair asking about what I did, why I was there, and why I was wearing a hat. I have kids myself, so I was able to navigate their questions and distract them for a little while. Their mom was doing things in the kitchen. She set down a small cup of iced tea after a few minutes and apologized for the wait. I told her she had nothing to apologize for and explained what I'd wanted to reiterate to her the day before. That I was in the lawn care service business, I did free mowing, and I thought that she would benefit from one. I told her about the social media aspect and made sure to let her know that it was totally optional. Sarah sat down with her own cup of tea and told me that she appreciated the sentiment but was not sure if even a free mow would be worth it in the long run for her. She explained her situation. Again, I'm leaving a lot of things out per her request, but the past 2 years had been rough for her and her family. Her husband, who had been the main breadwinner of their family, had passed away from cancer. Sarah thought that she would be able to get a job even with having to take care of her children, but the places nearby did not have the flexibility she needed. She had been relying on checks from her husband's pension, but because she had passed before he had turned a certain age, there was money she couldn't access due to his company's policy, and she had about 3 years left before she'd be able to see any of that money. Her kids went to public school, but they were going into 1st and 2nd grade, so they were constantly needing new clothes as they grew. Most of the money she had went towards them and the house utilities. As for the yard, it had been nearly a year since it was last mowed. Sarah used to have a neighbor come to mow it every 2 weeks, but he had moved away and none of her next door neighbors were able to assist. The houses on either side of hers had elderly ladies that hired mowing companies to take care of their yards, so she would have to pay someone to do anything with her yard. She had found a weed whacker 3 months ago on the side of the road and tried to use it to get some of the worst of the grass down to a manageable size. But the battery on it was shot and it only worked for a few minutes at a time. Sarah literally did not have the time to go out, cut the grass, come back into the house to charge the battery, and then go back outside to do it over and over again until the grass was at a manageable level. Even if she wanted to plan a day while her kids were at school, she would get behind on the chores she had to do for the general upkeep of the house. I apologized for intruding on her time, but Sarah was very polite about it and told me that she'd rather make time for conversation with someone other than a member of the HOA. I told her I ran into Karen. Sarah had things to say. Sarah: Karen knew about my situation back when my husband was first diagnosed. I did not expect her to bend over backwards to help me out, but I hoped there would be some discretion taken when I was late paying fees or if I needed more time to get things sent over to her after he passed away. But instead, she just fined me. I've gotten a stack of letters as long as my arm about how I owe over $3,500 for delinquent HOA fees and dues to the height of my grass. I told her that my offer still stood, that I would be more than happy to mow her grass for her for free, since it would help me to get people in the neighborhood to see my company's name. I did not offer my social media info, figuring that she'd rather just have everything over and done with and not have to worry about her lawn after it was cut down to the appropriate level. She asked me questions about my service and wanted to know if I charged after I mowed or if there was anything that she'd be left having to take care of once I finished mowing her lawn. I told her it was as simple as me taking the day to take care of the grass and clean up after myself. What she chose to do afterwards was her decision. I left my business card with her, letting her know that there was no pressure for her to call and ask for the mow. She called 2 days later asking if I was free over the weekend. I didn't have any jobs lined up. It was right in the middle of May and I'd completed most of my regular jobs and cuts the week before, so I told her that I'd be over whenever she had the time. She told me anytime after noon I could come over and do what I wanted to do. So I brought everything I had to tackle the nearly 8-foot grass and weeds. Push mowers, electric mowers, weed whackers. If I had it, I used it. The front of the yard took a good 2 hours to clear out and the backyard took nearly 4. I could see that she had made attempts to try and cut the grass, but without a proper mower, she didn't get anywhere. I was able to clear out her entire front and backyard and then did a cleanup with a rake and leaf blower to make sure I didn't miss any spots. I found out that she had a defined driveway and path to her front door that the grass had covered, and in the backyard she had a patio that had been overgrown with weeds. I tried to make everything look as even as it could with just a day of mowing, but I was proud of just how drastic the transformation was. Sarah came out of the house while I was packing my things in my truck and gave me a hug. She told me that she was so thankful for my help and that her kids could actually go outside and play around without her having to worry about the grass. I was happy to help and glad that I'd been able to give her some peace of mind. I asked if I could stop by in a week to make sure the grass was even, and Sarah agreed. A week later I arrived at her house and Sarah answered the door with a pinched look on her face. She calmed when she saw me and I asked her what was wrong. At first she was hesitant to say, but she eventually told me. Sarah, the HOA has not let up. I told them that I'd had my lawn mowed and I'd start paying the fine in increments since they wouldn't have to keep charging me for the work I had left to do. Instead, I got a letter yesterday telling me that my home was a nuisance to the neighborhood and I was going to be charged an additional fine and could be faced with eviction. It was dated 2 days after you came by, so I know it was some sort of delay with the mail. At the time, I didn't know much about the laws that came with HOAs, but even still, I knew that what they were doing to Sarah was not right. From what the HOA had told her to do, she had complied with their requests and the only thing she had to worry about was the fine. The fact that she had documentation about contacting the HOA after I left and the information on how she'd pay back the $3,500 fine made me suggest that she gets a lawyer and take this to court instead. Sarah was not sure about it, but I told her that if she found the right person, they'd be more than happy to take her case pro bono. I left her with that, but I still couldn't help but worry about her even after a few days of being out on other jobs. I waited another 2 weeks to visit, again just to check up on the grass, only to find Karen about to get into her car when I pulled up. Karen, oh, it's you. I see, she had enough money to hire your company to get her lawn under control, huh? Me, hi Karen. Karen, I didn't expect to see you here. What with how rude you were to me the last time I was here. I placed a complaint on your website. Didn't your manager tell you? Karen, I am the manager. I'm also one of 3 employees that goes out to assist with lawn care for my clients. Now, if you'll excuse me, Sarah brought me into the house and sat me down, asking if I knew any good lawyers. She showed me what Karen had dropped off, which was an actual eviction notice claiming Sarah had not followed the proper guidelines of the HOA and would be forcibly removed from her home if she didn't move out by the end of the month. I told her that I would help her however I could and that I would make sure the HOA would not threaten her like this again. The first thing we did was gather evidence. Sarah had saved every letter the HOA gave her, as well as the receipt I gave her for her free mow. It is standard procedure for me, if only to just have me make a note of when I'd need to go back to the property if they needed a trim or other help. The letters from the HOA dated back to nearly a year before her husband passed away, claiming that there were fees that Sarah had not paid, even though she had bank statements from each of the transactions she made to the HOA. I focused on getting into contact with a lawyer. I had a law office that I was familiar with before I started my business, and they were more than happy to speak with Sarah about what was going on here. I received a call from the lawyer that took Sarah's case asking me if there were any other documents I could provide to indicate my involvement in her situation, and I submitted the receipt from when I did the mow along with the invoice records of me visiting her home at the 1-week and 3-week mark to make sure the grass was behaving. Any information I got about the case came through Sarah, not the lawyer, and she called me every few days to let me know if there had been any updates on that case. There were a few weeks at the end of the year that I didn't hear from Sarah, and I got worried that something had happened. I visited at the end of October to make sure everything was alright, and as it turned out, things were as good as they could be. Sarah provided everything she could to the lawyer, and they were just waiting on the date of her court case since the HOA had broken a few property laws over the course of the past year and a half. They had no right to evict her since she was paying her regular dues to the HOA as well as mortgage payments, so that was something that the lawyer was hoping to latch onto and work with. I visited Sarah every few weeks to check on her yard as well as find out how things were going with her case. During that time, I didn't see Karen at all, which I was very happy about. At the beginning of March of last year, Sarah got her day in court against the HOA. The lawyer I helped find went through document after document indicating that Karen might have been discriminatory towards Sarah ever since Sarah told Karen that her husband was sick. Apparently, that was when the HOA letters started to come in droves requesting fines be paid in a timely manner and that they were infringements on policies. The HOA didn't have the documentation to back up their claims on the fines, except when it came to Sarah's yard. However, because they continued to send fines and harass Sarah even after I had mowed her lawn to an appropriate height, the judge ruled that there was still lingering discrimination towards Sarah that the HOA president used in order to try and extort money out of her. Needless to say, Sarah won the case. Karen and the HOA had to rescind the fines and fees against her and were asked to pay a good amount of money due to their discrimination. Apparently, that was enough to have the HOA go into the red. When I spoke to Sarah in April, she told me that the HOA had been fining not just her, but other residents of the neighborhood with strange fees because they had spent too much of their funding on an upgraded meeting room. Sarah's case made it possible for other members of the neighborhood to understand that they were being cheated and wanted to take the HOA to court for their own reasons. Well, it's been a little over a year since the case wrapped up, but Sarah and her 2 kids are doing better than ever. The HOA is no longer in the picture in the neighborhood, and every member of the board, including Karen, moved out. Now Sarah doesn't have to worry about fines or issues with the HOA anymore. I still drop by to mow her lawn for free. I'm never letting that woman pay for another mow for as long as she lives in that house. And yeah guys, honestly, OP is an absolute saint. What a good person. Really inspiring, to be honest. Either way, if you enjoy these HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video because that helps me tremendously. The next one is titled, "My neighbor kept parking in my driveway. So I parked behind him and went out of town." And this one is a petty revenge story you don't want to miss. So my neighbors have been parking in my driveway for months. I've asked him not to a bunch of times, but he always goes, "It is just for a second," and then shrugs it off. I came home last Friday and yep, there he was again, only the thing was, I was heading out of town for the weekend. So I pulled in behind him, locked up, grabbed my stuff and left a couple hours later. I had a bunch of missed calls and a text message like, "Dude, what the hell?" But I didn't answer it. I hope he had a relaxing weekend to think things through. And the next one is titled, "Don't Park in Disabled Spots." I have a disabled parking placard, and a few weeks ago I went to Target to buy things I did not need and forget the things I did. Not only were all the spaces taken, someone parked their gigantic Escalade on the line between 2 disabled spaces, taking up both. Wholly irritated because this happens so much, I walked around the car, no placard or disabled plate, cue the fury of a someone who has to deal with this stuff all the time, and cue my petty revenge. So I took a picture and went inside to find a manager. When I found one, I showed her the photo and she rolled her eyes and sighed. Apparently this happens a lot at their location because it's near an affluent town with a lot of very wealthy, very entitled people, and most often it's the owners of huge SUVs and F-150s that park like jerks. She said she would call the cops, so I decided to go back outside and hang out by the doors to watch the show. The manager joined me and we chatted while we waited for the police. The cops arrived and walked around the car, peering through the windows and running the plate. One cop took a little book out and started writing in it. They took some photos and one came over and asked if they would make an announcement in the store to get the driver outside. The manager radioed someone inside and asked them to announce the make and model and plate of the car over the PA system. A few minutes later, she came charging out of the store, middle-aged, well-dressed woman, the common Karen of North America, and already yelling at the police, of course. As soon as she got to her car, one of the cops held up his hand to shut her up and started lecturing her. I was too far away to hear, but she stopped yelling at least. That cop spoke to her for a few minutes and then the other cop with the little book handed her but 2 papers. She looked absolutely apoplectic. The cops came back over and spoke to the manager, telling her they ordered her to move her car and if she didn't or caused problems in the store to call them back and they would tow the car. They told us they gave her 2 tickets for each space at $500 each. Ouch. The manager thanked the police and me and went back inside. The woman stomped around a bit before getting in her car and peeling out. The cops looked at each other, then got in their cars and followed her. Pretty sure she continued to have the day she deserved. Meanwhile, I happily treated myself to some Legos for performing a public service. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My coworker, 55 male, has a sweater that he wears every day at work and leaves in the office overnight. He never takes it home to wash and over the last month it has developed a distinct smell. At first I tried to make innocuous comments to him, "Do you smell something musty?" etc. but he didn't catch on, so last week I said to him, "Hey, that sweater is starting to give a stench. Could you take it home and wash it?" He replied, "Nah, that's not my sweater," and walked away, which effectively ended the conversation. After he left one night, I went to his desk and smelled the sweater and confirmed that nasty stank, and it was so putrid up close. I have no idea how he lives like this, so I took the sweater on my way out and threw it in a dumpster out back. The next day he was looking around for it and asking everyone if they had seen it. I just shrugged and said, "No, have not seen it today," which was technically not a lie. I feel kind of bad, but I cannot live like that. We work in a 7-person office with no HR and our boss is not effective at dealing with issues, so I felt like this was my only option. Am I the a-hole? Clarification, when he said, "That's not my sweater," he was referring to the stink not being his sweater. The sweater was in fact his. He is a bit of an oddball, but I cannot even imagine that he would wear a random stinky sweater that he did not own. And here, ripe stars, would you have done something similar if you were in OP's shoes? Either way, let me know whether you think OP is the a-hole here or not. Comment number 1, everyone sucks here. Throwing stuff out that's not yours is crappy, even if your boss is ineffective, and this is something you should have attempted to bring to them. But I also don't know why this guy is wearing a stinky sweater that doesn't belong to him and then is mad when an item that doesn't belong to him is missing. Comment number 2, you're the a-hole, you cannot steal someone's property, period. It may have felt satisfying in the moment, but that's an actual crime. If he finds out it was you and this goes before HR, they are absolutely not gonna accept "I thought it smelled bad" as an excuse. Also, everyone is hung up on the guy saying the sweater was not his, but I think he was saying that the sweater was not causing the stench, not that the sweater did not belong to him. Edit, I see a lot of people suggesting that I had other options and the ideas being brought up are frankly asinine. Just spray some freeze and call it a day. Have you ever sprayed Febreze in a bathroom where someone took a dump? Then you know it just combines with the crap smell and almost gives it a sort of power-up. Next, tell HR about it. Well, some people have trouble reading, it seems. I already said it's a small office with no HR and our boss is incapable or unwilling to address situations like this. I did in fact bring it up to him and he said to find a compromise, such as allowing him to wear the sweater 3 days a week. Not a problem solver, this guy. As for the idea of take it home and wash it for him, I don't think this one even warrants a response. I suppose I should ask the rest of the office if they have any laundry for me to take home, so I can do it all at once. Edit number 2, I see many people bringing up the legality of this and the police being called or this going to court. May I remind everyone that we are talking about a sweater? I would love to hear how that 911 call goes. "Officer, I need to report a missing sweater. Please send your forensics team out ASAP and track this lunatic down before the sweater thief strikes again." Or God forbid, I get taken to sweater court. I hope the Honorable Judge Cardigan takes pity on me and offers a reduced sentence if I do people's laundry while in prison. Get real, people. Seriously, we are talking about office squabbles, not Grand Theft Sweater, aka GTS. update. Hey all, before the update I just wanted to apologize for getting so defensive in my original post. I've been feeling really stressed about the situation and I think my guilt expressed itself as anger. Even though I still don't agree with the alternative actions people offered, I should have been more chill about it. So then the update, we have a Monday morning meeting every week. And I had planned to pull my coworker aside at lunch to tell him what happened and explain why I felt it was necessary. At yesterday's meeting, my coworker took the opportunity during other business to bring up his sweater. He said that he felt disrespected, and as multiple people have complained to him about the smell, he has not been able to narrow down his suspect, so he needs a full confession or he'll be taking further measures. I thought about confessing, but to be honest, his eyes had a crazy look and it made me feel unsafe, so I kept my mouth shut. When no one said anything, he stormed out of the office. My boss predictably did nothing. A couple hours later, he returned with a guy who said he was his cousin and a police officer, though he was in normal clothes and had no badge or ID. He said his cousin was gonna be interrogating people individually all day. At this point, my boss finally stepped in and said that was not happening and brought my coworker into his office. I don't know what happened in there, but it got loud towards the end and I did not see him for the rest of the afternoon. I found out the next day that he was fired. Not exactly the outcome I wanted, but it does solve my problem. And the last one is a perfect petty revenge story that is titled, "My coworker kept stealing my pens, so I started refilling them with glitter ink." So I work in this pretty chill office, but for whatever reason, my pens kept missing. Not like all my pens, just mine, the ones I actually liked using. I kind of had a feeling who it was, but I didn't want to cause any drama. Then one day, I saw her using my purple gel pen during a meeting. I said something like, "Hey, I think that's mine." And she just laughed and went, "Oops, lol, I didn't even notice." So I ordered some cheap refillable pens and swapped the ink for glitter gel. They looked normal when you wrote with them, but dried all sparkly and ridiculous. So the next meeting she is writing away and someone goes, "Why does your notebook look like a birthday card?" And she just started at it like it betrayed her soul. My pens have not gone missing since, no apology or anything, just awkward silence. Honestly, I'll take it. And yeah guys, thank you so much. As always, it has been an honor and I will see you again tomorrow.